We photographers, we are the cousins of the architects. There is a very deep bond between us, a visual bond, that understand light and how lights work through the days and through the seasons. My name is Bénédicte Kurzen. I'm a photographer and member of the photo agency Noor Images. I've been living 8 years in South Africa and then 8 years in Nigeria, and now I partially live in Lisbon. My career started in 2003 in the Middle East, where I wanted to be a war photographer. And ever since, I've evolved and I've been led to do lots of different things. So not only conflict photography, but also very much in-depth photojournalism and documentary photography of my visual language, and almost constitutive of the idea I have of composition. This takes me to what we are going to do today, and we are going to go to the periphery of Lisbon, far away from the historical center, far away from the postcards, and we are going to discover the treasures of modernist and postmodernist architecture in Portugal. A building is also created in the image of a history, of a culture. And I think if you don't understand the culture, if you don't understand the building, you can do a very interesting aesthetic work still, but there's an entire dimension to the building and to the history and to the context that is not going necessarily to be part of your process. So for me, personally, I prefer to really feed myself with a lot of information because I want to understand what I'm photographing. When I look at a building, especially a modernist building, I really feel that there is a common appreciation of light, there is a common appreciation of structures, and just how the beautiful sun of Portugal shines through the glass, shines through the galleries, and gives to all these structures the entire volume. My taste for modernist architecture comes from Africa, where I've been based for so long, and especially in Nigeria, where there is a lot of different buildings that were built in post-independence Nigeria, and we call the style tropical brutalism. And this was my first heart crush, heartbeat for this type of architecture, with a lot of concrete, with the serial principle of modernism. Of course, the vegetation is very different, the climate is very different, the context is very different, but there are ties. And of course, Portugal has very strong historical connection to Africa, sadly because of the colonial past. But this type of architecture, these peripheries, were also built in connection to this history. So I'm gonna go to two neighborhoods that are literally 5 minutes apart from each other. The first one is Marvila and the second one is Chilas. And I'm going to pay attention to three very iconic buildings of this modernist and postmodernist architectural style. The first building is called Pantera Cor-de-Rosa, and it's literally translated into the Pink Panther. The second building is called Cinco Dedos, which is the 5 fingers, but actually from the sky you'll see it looks more like a fan, but it's a series of 5 buildings. And the third area is called Zona J, Zone J. It is more funky. It was created by Thomas Taveira, who is an iconic architect of the postmodernist style here in Portugal. What's going to be really important in this architectural photography course is not necessarily to have straight lines, because I'm going to use a medium format camera. What's going to be really important is how I'm going to construct images and compose images with the light, with the colors, with the amazing blue sky. I like to work all the way through the day because all the light here in Portugal has amazing quality. It's never too harsh. The colors are always very intense, and yet the sun is very soft and soothing. I decided to shoot with Hasselblad. I could have also shot with a Rolleiflex, but the good thing about the Hasselblad is that you can actually change lenses. It's really important. Here you have 80mm, which is the equivalent in 35mm films to a 50mm lens. And this lens, you can easily change it. And then to pay more attention to the details, you can switch it to 150 millimeter. That opens at 4. So here there is actually a little red arrows that you fit in at the top. There is also a red dot here, and you match the two, so you know exactly how to change your lens. So this one is gonna really allow us to make the close-ups and also to pay more attention to the architectural details of the building, like a window or the serial of window or the light that go through an entrance. And that's going to be really interesting to work with the teleobjective. Here, of course, you have the focus, which is very comfortable because it's quite far from the body. And of course, like any analog camera, you have to know your coordinates of the aperture and the speed. With the Hasselblad, it's really easy because you can match the two. You have to push this little thing there to be able to work only with the aperture and change only the aperture. But if technically you don't touch this one, you can just change the aperture and work with the depth of field, increase it or decrease it, which is in architectural photography also really interesting to play with. Is like, are you going to be wanting to pay a very focused attention to details and use a very big aperture, or are you do you want to make sure that all the details and all the picture is going to be sharp? The point of this assignment, of this exercise, is an interpretation of the architectural style. I'm working with a square, and I think it's really an interesting challenge to work with a square, rebuild a landscape, and really make this architectural style my own.